Right, well, who would have thought that 5 weeks could go that quick? I certainly didn't. People said to me this morning, are you here just as a guest this morning because you just can't stay away? I'm like, no, it's actually been 5 weeks. You can probably guess what I'm talking about this morning, just based on the fact that we've had so many problems here take place this morning. We're talking about faith. And I feel for the team at the back and the guys on stage. We have just had our whole system decide I'm not going to play today. It is its own personality. So I want to thank the guys at the back. Can we put our hands together? I tell you, you don't know the half of what they've had to try and deal with here this morning. The fact that we even got something happening this morning is a minor miracle. The whole thing just decided it is shutting down. So these guys have been working tirelessly. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for us being able to continue. And I take my hat off to them. It's a horrible job to have to do when things go really, really poor like this, but I appreciate all of you for all that you've done. And then, of course, to the worship team who had to try and sing with words not working right, and that was quite fun to watch. I saw who hasn't learnt the songs on stage, whereas, of course, I don't know them, but it's okay because no one's looking at me, so it's just how it is. Who here finds it easy to snack on a platter? I'm talking cheese, metwurst, olives, dips, crackers, carrot, celery. Who can just start on one of those and just keep going? You like that sort of thing? Is it something that happens as we get older? We like more and more of that? As a kid, I never would have gone for that. I would have just gone for Tim Tams. But now I just crave that sort of stuff. Who here finds it easy to procrastinate? Anyone? I still have a few walls in my house that are waiting for that second coat. I'll get to that, just never do. Who here finds it easy to get annoyed at someone? Couple? Come on, be honest. That's better. Yeah, don't get me near traffic. Who finds it easy to spend money? Depends on what? Depends on the shop. Who finds it easy to worry? Doubt? Be afraid? Not the boys. I heard a couple of them go, no. And and it's really easy to distrust. And I think that's the reason it's not always easy to have faith. Faith is not actually natural for us. Do you realise that? Faith is not natural. And so for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be looking at this idea of faith and some key principles and how we can actually grow our faith. And today I want to start with one, and it's this. Faith has to be more than amazing. Because we can be amazed by things and yet not have faith in them. Now, I've told this story some years ago here, many years ago. I think it was over 10 years ago. And so some of you have heard this, but I don't think too many would have. But when my wife, Sally, and I went to the USA in 2005, we visited Las Vegas. And we're walking down, there's really only one street anyway, there's the main strip. And there was this hotel called the Stratosphere. And the Stratosphere, I think I have a photo of it here. On top has this massive tower. Now, for context, you have no idea from that photo how tall this building is, by the way. But I have a genuine fear of heights. Anyway, I reckon when they built this hotel, can we go back, to the picture? I reckon when they built this hotel, they would have been working out, how can we make this super wow factor? And so I'm sure there's some crazy architect that's like, why don't we just build a ride on top of it? Let's build a roller coaster on it. And then some other dude's gone, that would be okay, but what would be better? Why don't we put 4 rides on top of it. Let's give people not one, but 4 ways that they can get severe whiplash. And so one of these 4 is called the Extreme ride. And I do have for you now the advertising for it, just in case it whets your appetite. Here it is. This is what they say. Ever been on a ride 866 feet above the ground? With the Extreme, you can. It sends you headfirst 27 feet over the edge of the Stratosphere Hotel. Try not to scream when you go over the edge. After going over the edge, you'll dangle weightlessly above the main street before being pulled back and pushed over again and again and again. And so this whole ride actually goes off of the edge of the building and then makes you look like you're about to fall off the edge, over the edge, and then it just stops. And then the whole thing tilts, and then going backwards, you feel like you're falling off the edge of the building. Now, this ride amazed me. I'm looking at it and I'm going, how is that not going to result in death to begin with? But it looked so scary. It looks, how is this thing defying gravity? Like, how have they actually designed this thing? How do they get that thing up there? How do they build this thing? It is amazing. And then my wife said to me, let's go up and do the roller coaster. And I said, have you lost your mind? There was no way I was even going up there, let alone going on that ride. See, whilst the rides amazed me, there was no way I was going to put my faith in them. Can you see the difference? In the book of Mark, Jesus has recruited some people. We call them disciples. And so he's got these followers and he's got this plan for these guys. And the plan isn't just to follow him. He doesn't want them to follow him. No, he's got a much bigger plan. He wants them to live like him. And this presented a real problem because Jesus was a man of faith. So if they're going to live like him, they're going to have to be men of faith. But the problem was they weren't men of faith. And so Jesus would have to do something that would help them to become men of faith. And the best way to do that is to put them in a really, really tough situation. And that's exactly what he did. Let's have a look at this. So we're going to look today at Mark chapter 6, the Gospel of Mark, verses 45 to 52. Let's look at the story. I'm sure many of you know this. Starting with 45, it says, immediately after this, that is, after Jesus has just fed the 5,000, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and head across the lake to Bethsaida while he sent the people home. Late that night, the disciples were in their boat in the middle of the lake and Jesus was alone on land. He saw that they were in serious trouble, rowing hard and struggling against the wind and waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. He intended to go past them, but when they saw him walking on the water, they cried out in terror, thinking he was a ghost. They were all terrified when they saw him. But Jesus spoke to them at once. Don't be afraid, he said. Take courage, I'm here. Then he climbed into the boat and the wind stopped. They were totally amazed, for they still didn't understand the significance of the miracle of the loaves. Their hearts were too hard to take it in. Now, as I just said, in this passage, and this is important context, the disciples have just witnessed Jesus feeding the 5,000. And now they find themselves in another tricky, tough situation. They're trying to row across the Sea of Galilee. They're facing an impossible headwind. It says the waves are going, so the seas are angry, and they've been rowing for hours. And on top of that, it's 3 a.m. It's dark. They're exhausted. They're wet. They're cold. They're tired. They're stressed. They're worried. And they're probably fearing for their lives. They are in what we could call a deep crisis. This is way beyond their ability to deal with it. They're in a very dangerous and life-threatening situation, so it's fair to say it's tough. And Jesus would say, perfect. But what's really important before we go any further is how did these guys get themselves into this situation in the first place? Because when we get ourselves into bad situations, that's one of the first things we like to do, is to think, how did this happen to me? Were they being stupid? Is it because they'd done something wrong? Had they disobeyed God? Verse 45 says the answer. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and head across the lake. This is Jesus' idea. It was all Jesus' idea. Get back in the boat, boys. I want you to go again, which means they were actually being obedient. So what's happening to them is not because they've done something wrong, not because they've been naughty, not because someone's trying to get back at them. They weren't being stupid. They were exactly where Jesus wanted them. So Jesus puts them in this tough situation, which leads to the question, why would Jesus do this? Why would the Son of God, full of grace, mercy and love, why would he put his disciples in a situation where all they're going to encounter is fear and danger? And the reason is because they needed it. Because these, at this point in time, are not men of faith. They still relied heavily on themselves. They relied on everything that they could do in the way that they could think about things. And so Jesus took them to a place where they couldn't do that, where they couldn't rely upon themselves. And I think God likes to do the same of us. He wants to take you and I to places that we don't want to go. And he does it not to make us fearful, but in order to develop something in us. And I think sometimes we cry out, God, why are you doing this? Why aren't you helping me? Like, why are you letting this happen to me? And I think it's a fair question, and I don't think God ever has an issue of us asking those questions. But if we're Christians, and if our life is tough at the moment, and you're going through maybe the hardest time in your life and you're suffering, what we need to understand is this. If that is the case, it doesn't mean that God has forgotten us. It doesn't mean that God has abandoned us. It doesn't even mean necessarily that God is the cause of your suffering. Sometimes we just suffer for no reason. It can sometimes just be bad luck. But don't be surprised that no matter what the reason, no matter what is happening in your life, if something's going on, God can use this as an opportunity to teach you to rely on him more. And I think that's a key part of us growing our faith, is learning to rely less on us and more on God. Let's go back to the passage in verse 47. It says, late that night, the disciples were in their boat in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on land. He saw that they were in serious trouble, rowing hard and struggling against the wind and waves. About 3 a.m, Jesus came toward them, walking on water. We've talked about this before, Jesus walking on water. He does it, of course, in other passages as well. But how desensitized are we to this verse? I don't know about you, but I've heard it so many times that I regularly take it for granted. I can just read that and just keep reading. Jesus walked on water. I often read it and I don't get excited. I just read it as matter of fact. You know, if I heard that Danielle had walked on water, I'd get excited. I'd then be asking a lot of questions like, did she really walk on water? Or like, was there some sort of a clear glass underneath the water that was, I don't really believe that. But if people said to me, no, she definitely walked on water, I'd get excited. But Jesus walked on water. It's like, oh yeah, he did that. Jesus came to them walking on the water. Have you ever tried it? I have. I was with some friends in Darwin And they had a big pool and they had a big area that we could actually do it. In fact, walking really did not work. So then we tried running on water, where we took a big run up and the pool didn't really have a coping. So we were able to just run pretty flat from a distance, from about here to the black wall. Here's the pool starting. We would run as hard as we could and then see when we got to the pool if we could just keep, almost like your feet are just on the water jumping along. Didn't work. You actually can't walk on water if you didn't realise that. It's not actually possible. And that is the moment that this passage gets powerful. The moment Jesus walks on water, it's powerful because people can't walk on water. So therefore, when you read that in the passage, you have to understand God clearly must be doing something. God has to be doing something. Jesus, the other reason it gets powerful is that Jesus didn't even need to walk on the water. Think about this. He didn't need to walk on water. He could have dealt with them from the shore. All he had to do is say to the storm, stop, and it would have stopped. And how do we know that? Is because he's already done that. In Mark 4, he's already done that. It says in Mark 4:39, he'd already done it in front of them. He got up, rebuked the wind and said to the waves, quiet, be still. Then the wind died down. It was completely calm. He could have done that again. He could have said, just stop. And the storm would have stopped. The wind would have died down. Everything would have been calm. The men in the boat would have become less anxious, less worried, less doubtful, and they would have just been able to move on and row to the other side. So Jesus is clearly walking on the water for some other reason. It's not to go out for the men. He's not walking out there to deal with the storm. He's walking out there to deal with some doubt. He wanted to do something in the hearts and lives of these men that he probably felt he couldn't do from the shore. And his focus is not on making their life easier for them, it's on changing their level of faith. Now I want you to think about this. When you're in a really bad situation, and maybe you are today, maybe you're not, hope you're not, but if you are, if you're in a bad situation right now, what is your prayer more often than not? How often is it, Lord, thank you for putting me in this awful situation? I'm sure it's going to be a great time of personal growth. Is that what you pray? Or do you say, Lord, help me. Just take this thing away. I just don't want it. Please, Lord, I'd do anything for you. Just make my life easier. Can't you just make this thing go away? Who would pray that? Because the reality is most of us Christians, apart from the really holy ones, most of us would prefer God to give us more comfort than expand our faith. Is that true? We like comfort. We don't like sleeping on the floor, do we? We like a mattress. We like our comfort. We would rather have a life that is easy and more predictable. We would rather have our plans and dreams come true than let God do what he wants to do with us if it's going to be uncomfortable. Jesus is walking on the water. He's trying to make a point. And here's the scene. We've got to picture this. The wind is blowing, the waves are crashing, the boat is probably going up and down, and Jesus walks by. He's right near the disciples. Look what it says then. It says in verse 48, he intended to go past them. He planned to keep walking. Hi, guys. Have you ever thought about that? He planned to keep going. His plan was, I'm just going to do a walk by. That was the plan. And when they saw him walking on the sea, they all said, hi, Jesus, we're glad you're here. And they all had a wonderful night. But when they saw him walk on the water, they cried out in terror, thinking he was a ghost. They were all terrified when they saw him. They're in the sea doing this, preparing to drown. Who knows what it looks like? And here's Jesus, just walking by. He's defying all the laws of nature. He's not doing what anyone can possibly do. And yet, as he walks by, they are not at all encouraged. They're not at all feeling comfort. Oh, thank goodness at least Jesus is here. No, they're not even relieved. They're not in any way positive. The Bible says they're absolutely terrified. And the only thing they can figure out is he must be a ghost. It's embarrassing. If you think about it, it's embarrassing. Because right that same day, only a few hours earlier, they had just witnessed this same miracle worker take 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish, and feed 5,000 men and women and children basically out of nothing and have heaps of leftovers. They've just witnessed this. They've just seen this guy can do things that people can't do. This is the same day. And that night, they've forgotten it. Yes, they're in a different situation. This is a different situation to the other one. The other one was about provision. And this situation is clearly about life and death. But we've got to remember, they'd also watched him calm that other storm not that long ago. So there's really no excuse. So what about us? When we go through difficulty, what do? Do we panic? Do we wonder why the person's life next to us is easier than ours? Do we question God's goodness again and again and again? Why are you doing this to me, God? What did I do wrong to deserve this? And you know, how we respond in these times of crisis is totally up to us, because no one is more influential in our life than us. You know that? There is no one more influential in your life than you. No one talks to you more than you do. It's true. You might be just thinking things, but as you think, you're talking to yourself. No one talks to you more than you. We are in constant conversation with ourselves. The things you and I say and think about ourselves are so important because they do determine the way that we act, the way that we react and respond in tough times. And what happens next in this story is really awesome. It's a great picture of grace. The wind is still blowing, the waves are still crashing, the boat is still getting thrown around. Nothing has changed except Jesus arrived. And the disciples should have been relieved, as we said. They should have been excited, but instead they're just panicking. And at this moment of storm and panic, Jesus speaks, and what he says is amazing. I mean, he could have said, you know what, I've had it. I've taught you guys. I've taught you so many times. I've shown you so many miracles. I've done so much for you. You still don't trust me. I'm done. Get yourselves out of this situation. But Jesus is full of grace. He doesn't do that. He says, don't be afraid. He said, take courage. I am here. And sometimes we even gloss over that statement. Don't be afraid, he said, take courage, because I am is here. I am. One of the names of God is I am. He's saying, don't be afraid. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the one who is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, the one who created the world just by speaking it into being, the one who holds everything together by his power, the one who is control over every experience of your life is here with you right now. The I am is here. God is here with you. He was hoping he wouldn't have to actually stick around. He wanted to do a walk by because he shouldn't have to be here, because they're meant to know that he's always with them. It should have been fine for him to be on the shore because God is still with them. He shouldn't have had to stick around. No matter where we are, we don't need a physical Jesus. You and I don't have a physical Jesus walking around wherever we go in whatever situation we're in. And that was the point. Guys, you don't actually need that. You just need my Spirit. You need my Holy Spirit that lives and dwells in you. That is who you need. God is always with us, no matter what situation we are in. This is what the crisis is all about. It's why Jesus set this whole thing up. It's why the disciples needed to be in that storm, because Jesus was creating an opportunity to try and teach them something really important. And here it is. Don't you understand that I am with you always, forever? Church, we are never alone. Sure, you will feel alone. I guarantee you there'll be times that you feel alone. I've felt very alone in recent times. It's weird, but sometimes I feel really alone. But we are not alone. We are never left to our little wisdom. We are never left to our weak strength. We are never left to our resources, because the I Am is always with us. Because God is always with us, even in our worst crisis. Maybe you're a parent here and you're exhausted, or you're discouraged and you're hurting and you're trying to deal with your kids. I think the best advice I could give you is just to remember you are not alone. God knows exactly what's going on and He is with you. If you've lost your job and you don't know what to do, remember I'm not in this crisis by myself. God is my provider. He is with me. Maybe you are here and you are really sick. Whether it's physical or mental, it doesn't really make any difference. And your body and your mind is not coping. We need to remember, if that is you, I'm not in this situation alone. God, my healer, is with me. And if we're feeling alone, we need to remember that we aren't actually alone, because God is always with us. Then he climbed into the boat and the wind stopped. They were totally amazed. Amazed. This is not a compliment. Being amazed is not amazing. It's not great. Mark, the writer of this gospel, is not proud of them. They were totally amazed, for they still didn't understand the significance of the miracle of the loaves. Their hearts were too hard to take it in. You see, there is a big difference between amazement and faith. The disciples were amazed by what they saw him do, but they certainly didn't have enough faith to put their trust in him. Faith is my willingness to trust who God says he is and what he has done, and to live my life in a way that I'll do everything he asks me to do, knowing that I can because God is with me. Even if I think I can't, I do it anyway because God is with me. And I put my faith in the fact that God will help me do what I think I can't actually do. That is faith. There is a significant difference between amazement and faith. You can be amazed by things and not put your faith in it. You can be amazed by the stories in the Bible. You can be amazed by the gospel story and still not be living by faith. You can be amazed by the teaching of Jesus and not be living by faith. You can be amazed by the actions of other Christians and not be living by faith. We can be amazed at the worship time we have and not be living by faith. We can be amazed by the love of the people in our life group and not be living by faith. We can be amazed at the impact of the ministries in our church and not be living by faith. You can even be amazed at seeing a man walk on water and still not be living by faith. Jesus walking on water should have been reassuring for the disciples, but instead it was just terrifying. They were totally amazed, for they still didn't understand the significance of the miracle of the loaves. Their hearts were too hard to take it in. When Mark says, for they still didn't understand the significance of the miracle of the loaves, what he means is, even having seen all those miracles, they still didn't get it because their hearts were too hard. Which means it's possible to be a follower of Jesus Christ and at the same time have a hard heart. Now, I want you to imagine that this is my heart. Right? If this is my heart, what would happen if I try to squeeze it with my fingers? What do you think is going to happen? You think I'll break? That's a man of faith right there. I ain't going to break this because it's rock hard. It's change resistant. It's not moldable. That thing's not changeable. You know what? We can be the same. We can be really hard to change because we very quickly get comfortable with where we're at. And when things get comfortable, you know what we don't want to do? We don't want to change that. We get saved, but then we can easily be happy holding on to some of our issues rather than dealing with them sometimes. But God actually wants to free us of everything that can get in the way of us having a close relationship with Him. But we should be taking this gift of God's saving grace and saying, Lord, I'm so grateful for what you did for me. It means everything to me. I want to be with the people who love you. I want to celebrate your grace. I want to learn more about you. I want more of your grace. I want this grace to do everything in me that it's intended to do. I want you to radically change my life. And yet so many people go, but I'm not going to ever pray that because I don't want to be uncomfortable. You can't be comfortable and be living a life of faith. It's going to be tricky. If you're living a life of comfort, it means you're able to do everything yourself. There's no risk. Jesus put himself into that storm because he knew the boat was full of people that had an identity crisis. They didn't understand who they were, and they certainly didn't understand what they'd been given. And if you're going through some sort of crisis, there is just one thing I want you to remember today. Worship team, do you want to come? One thing we need to remember today is this. It's really simple, right? I'm going to keep it really simple. Remember this. No matter what you think, you are never alone. You are never alone. The I am, God, is always there to help you. He's always there to support you. He's always there to build you. He's always there to guide you. He's always there to pick up the pieces. All we have to do is put our faith in him. Listen and obey what he asks us to do and trust that he knows best. Man, that's a hard thing to do, especially when I think I know best. It's a hard thing to go, all right, I don't think this is the right thing to do, but if that's what you're saying, God, I'm going to do it. Trust that he knows best. And when we believe that, and I mean when you really believe that, we're starting to live a life of faith rather than just amazement. Let's not be amazed by God. God is amazing. But let's not be content with being amazed by God. Let's put our trust in him in all our situations we find ourselves in. And as we do that, let God grow our faith. He wants to do it. I'm sure that there are so many people in this room here today that for some reason, it may be comfort, it may not be, but for some reason, you stopped doing what it is you knew and you know God wanted you to actually do. Whether it was fear of failure, whether it was like, I'm too busy, or whether it was just doubt, there'll be a reason that God put something on your heart for you to do. But you let the waves and the circumstances stop you from doing the things that God called you to do. And I want to encourage you today, you know what? If those things are still on your heart, it's not too late. If you still feel there are things that God has been challenging you to do, to step out in faith, it is not too late. It's never too late. God is a gracious God. We saw that today. The disciples, he should have had enough of them. He should have been fed up with them. He wasn't. Because God is so gracious. He is so merciful. He is always ready for us to turn it around. To actually go, all right, God, I'm going to finally put my trust in you and stop trusting myself. The moment you actually hand everything over to God, it is amazing what you will be able to achieve with God at your side. You will achieve exactly what God intended you to do. I think we across the world in Christianity must be missing out on so many things that we're meant to be doing because we let these things stop us. So I hope that over the next 3 weeks you are encouraged and challenged for those little things that you thought, oh, well, I missed it, I should have done it, I never did it because I was too scared. You know what? Start praying about it and start saying, God, if you want me to start to actually get back to that, I repent for what I did, Lord. I'm sorry I did that. I should have trusted you more. Here I am. What do you want to do with me? Man, it's a scary thing to pray. But if you want to grow your faith, you can't do that and stay comfortable. We have to step out. Let's worship. Let's stand.
Well, church, we're taking a risk ourselves this morning. There's a song that's been on our hearts as a team, and we want to sing it over you this morning, and it's called More Than Able. And it starts in just being broken down and declaring to God, when did I forget this? And declaring that He is more than abundantly enough. So if you know this song, we want you to join in. We want you to worship. We want you to listen to the words. We want to glorify the name of Jesus this morning. When did I start to forget all of the great things you did? When did I throw away faith for the impossible? How did I start to believe that you were sufficient for me? Why do I talk myself out of seeing miracles? You are more than able. You are more than able. You You are more than able. Who am I to deny what the Lord can do? Hey. Now I see all that I have. Oh, I've got my confidence back. I put my trust in the one who still does miracles. You do miracles. You are more than able. You more. You are more than able. Yes. You are more than able. You're more than able. You are more than able. Who am I to deny what the Lord can do? Can you imagine, with all of the faith in the room, what the Lord can do? What the Lord can do? It's gonna happen. Just let the way make it through. He's gonna move. He's gonna move. Can you imagine, with all of the faith in the room, what the Lord can do? What the Lord can do? It's gonna happen. Just let the way make it through. He's gonna move. He's gonna move. Can you imagine, with all of the faith in the room, what the Lord can do? What the Lord can do? It's gonna happen. Just let the way make it through. He's gonna move. He's gonna move anything. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Who am I to deny what the Lord? Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Who am I to deny what the Lord can do? Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Who am I to deny what the Lord can do? Who am I to deny what the Lord can do? Who am I to deny what the Lord can do? You are more than able. 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 Who am I to deny what the Lord can do? I've come a long way. I've seen how you work. There's so much goodness and grace, much more than I deserve, 'cause I know who I am, and I can't stay where I'm at. 'cause he's not done with me. Come on, tell him. He's not done with me. Yes. No. There's so much more to this story. You're not done with me. Yeah. You're not done with me. Yes. No. You're not done with me. Yes. There's so much more to this story. You're not done with me. Yeah. You're not done with me. Yeah. You're not done with me. Yes. There's so much more to this story. You're not done with me. Yeah. Who am I to deny what the Lord can do? Who am I to deny what the Lord can do? You are more than able. God is more than able. God is more than able. God is more than able. Who am I to deny what the Lord can do?
Wow, that's a pretty perfect song for a sermon. It's like I wrote a sermon around that song. I think I don't need to say a lot. Anything is possible, but I'll qualify that. Anything is possible if God's in on it. If God's not in on it, I don't agree with that statement. Not everything is possible. But if God is in on it, not only is it possible, it will happen if we have enough faith. If we will trust, if we have heard him correctly and he has put it on our heart that this is what we're going to do, and we are obedient and we do everything he calls us to do, anything is possible. I want to leave you with that. God bless, and I hope you can join us for the second part next week. And I encourage you, go away and pray about this and say, am I too comfortable, God? Am I too comfortable? Hope you have a great week.